Just to make things clear, I absolutely love my mom. She is a good person, and I know she loves me very much. I live in a separate country from my mom, so I always call her at least once a week so we can catch up and stay in contact. I enjoy talking with my mom, but every time we call, she unloads all her stress onto me. My mom and dad do not have a very good relationship. They were divorced for about 8 years, then got remarried a few years ago. But I have no idea why, because they are not compatible in a relationship. They want entirely different things. And my dad doesn't treat my mom how she deserves to be treated. But regardless, I love them both and I supported them in their remarrying. My mom constantly unloads her stress onto me about my dad. Something he said or did that was rude or inconsiderate, how he never lets her do something without his control. These are all things I generally expect from my dad, because that's how he has always been, at least while I've been around. My mom is fully aware of this too, but she chooses to stay with him regardless and then complains about him all the time. Not just to me, but to anyone in her life who is willing to listen. I am a very empathetic person, so I unfortunately have a tendency to take on other people's stress. Since this is something she does every time we talk, we usually call for 4 hours. It is very mentally draining for me. It also makes me stressed about the next time we will talk. I know the obvious answer here might be to just talk to her about how I feel, but I don't know how to do that without making her feel like she can't talk to me about her stress. I am happy that my mom feels like she can talk to me about these things, and I am happy to listen. I don't want to ruin that. But I also can't handle the amount of stress she unloads onto me. Not to mention the amount she complains about my dad also negatively affects my own view of him, which I feel is unfair to him, because while yes, he is a person with issues, he is still my dad and I love him. And I know he just needs help like everyone does with their problems. No matter how many times I have given her my opinion, she never does anything about it, and the cycle of complaining continues. Any advice on how to talk to her about this? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. All you can do is tell her what you told us. You love her and want to support her, but hearing that she's miserable so often is very hard for you. Comment 2. You might find it helpful to talk with a therapist about how to frame this conversation with your mom and find a boundary that works for you. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around. A lot has happened since my last post. So, my mom's birthday was coming up, and I thought it would be a good idea to surprise her with a visit. I booked my flight, excited to see her face light up when I showed up at her doorstep. But when I got there, things took a turn I didn't expect. The day after I arrived, my dad threw a small party for her. It was supposed to be a happy occasion, but halfway through, my mom pulled me aside. She was upset, saying my dad had forgotten her actual birthday date and celebrated it 2 days early. It was a mistake, sure, but it was the last straw for her. She was tired of feeling like she didn't matter to him. I tried to comfort her, but inside, I was fuming. I couldn't believe my dad would mess up something so important. It made me question if he really cared about her at all. I was caught in the middle of their mess again, and it was exhausting. The next day, I sat down with my dad. I wanted to understand why he'd made such a blunder. He confessed that he'd been feeling overwhelmed at work and just lost track of the date. He felt terrible about it, but he didn't know how to apologize to my mom. It was a side of him I hadn't seen before, vulnerable and unsure. I suggested he do something special for her, something to show he really did care. He agreed, and we planned a redo of the birthday celebration, this time on the correct date. I hoped this would smooth things over, but I was skeptical. Meanwhile, I was dealing with my own issues. My job had been stressful lately, and being home wasn't the break I'd hoped for. I found myself snapping at my parents over little things, which wasn't like me at all. I was ashamed of my behavior, but I couldn't seem to help it. The redo birthday came, and my dad went all out. He cooked her favorite meal, bought her a beautiful necklace, and even wrote her a heartfelt card. It was touching to see him put in so much effort. For a moment, it seemed like things might be okay between them. But then, my mom pulled me aside again. She confessed that she'd been seeing someone else for the past few months. She said she'd fallen out of love with my dad years ago and only stayed for my sake. I was shocked. I felt betrayed, angry, and sad all at once. Why hadn't she told me sooner? Why did she remarry my dad if she felt this way? I didn't know what to do with this information. I felt like I was living a lie, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I needed to get away, to clear my head. So I made an excuse about work and booked an earlier flight home. On my last night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. I realized that my mom's constant venting had been her way of reaching out for help. She'd been trapped in a marriage she didn't want, and I'd been too caught up in my own feelings to see it. In the morning, I left without saying goodbye. I couldn't face them, not after everything. I felt guilty for abandoning my mom, but I also felt relieved to be going back to my own life. Back home, I decided to set some boundaries. I told my mom I needed to limit our calls to once a month. It was a hard conversation, but necessary. She was upset, but she understood. I think she realized she'd been leaning on me too much. As for my dad, I haven't spoken to him since I left. I'm still processing my feelings about him. I know he's not perfect, but he's my dad, and I can't just cut him out of my life. It's been a tough week, but I'm trying to move forward. I'm focusing on my job and my own well-being. It's not easy, but I'm doing my best. Thanks for reading. My brother's OCD made him throw out a brand new fridge because of eggs. So I gave him an ultimatum and watched him walk out the door forever. My brother is 34 years old and has a severe case of obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, and hypochondria, which consists of many symptoms. The main issue is that he's extremely repulsed by eggs and fish, as he believes that omega-3 does something horrible to him. He never fully explained to me what it does, as he says, "I just won't understand." But I know that he believes that those kinds of things give him stomach aches and cause skin conditions. He has been to many, many doctors, and none of them found any problem with him that relates to these kinds of foods. It's obviously okay that he doesn't want to eat fish and eggs. His life, his choice. But it's not only that he won't eat them, he can't stand the idea of being around them. He has his own shelf in the fridge, which is isolated from any product containing omega-3. If someone accidentally puts something with eggs on his shelf, he throws out all the food in it. If my mom makes food and he finds out she touched something with eggs that day, he won't eat any of her food. If someone accidentally touches him after eating fish or eggs, he goes into a tantrum for a few hours, showering and washing his hands. He's basically repulsed by me because I used to eat a lot of canned tuna a few years ago when I worked out a lot. When I go near him, he flinches back like I'm the most disgusting thing in the world. I can go on, but hopefully you get it. I, male 27, currently live with my girlfriend, GF, in a different city. And I've mostly been living away from home since I was 18. So my mom, female 64, and he are living on their own. She does everything for him. Cooking, cleaning, paying, you name it. All while working a full-time job. She's a dedicated woman who hasn't taken a day off in her life. But she's just tired right now. Tired of life and of this situation, and I can't blame her. I must say that I believe that by doing everything for him, she allows him to keep acting this way and not do anything to better himself. I've told her that many times, but even if she says she understands and that I'm right, she won't really do anything about it. She just doesn't know how to set boundaries. She's also an anxious person herself, so she doesn't want him to cook since she's afraid he would ruin things in the kitchen. Or she doesn't want him to leave the house without telling her where and when he'll be back, even though he's 34 years old. Basically, she treats him like a hopeless child, which is part of the problem because I can see from the side how his confidence is being shattered by this. Another big problem is that he won't take medicines or pills at all. He believes that all of his problems started when he took Ritalin as a teenager. So taking medicines that can help his OCD, anxiety, depression, etc. is not an option. He has been to many therapists, from psychologists to cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, trainers, and nothing really helped. After going to his recent CBT trainer, there was an improvement with his OCD, but it didn't stick after he stopped meeting him, since the trainer told him he can't further help him. I just feel helpless right now, as I don't know what I can do to help. I see my brother's life getting ruined, and how it ruins my mom's life as well. She can't find a partner, because how do you bring a new person into this crazy situation? She can't find peace and relax after all these years. She did accept the idea of going to a therapist herself, who will guide her on how to act with my brother. But I won't believe it until I see it. And honestly, I don't even know which kind of therapy is appropriate for this type of guidance. Seriously, any kind of advice would be appreciated. Now, for a few comments before the update. Well, actually, this post didn't have any comments. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So, last week, things went from bad to worse. My mom decided to renovate the kitchen, thinking a fresh start might ease my brother's anxieties. She spent a fortune on a new fridge with separate compartments, hoping it would help him feel more comfortable. But when the contractors accidentally left a carton of eggs on his pristine shelf, he lost it. He threw out the fridge, brand new, mind you, and my mom just stood there crying. She had tried to do something nice, and it backfired spectacularly. In the aftermath, my mom was so distraught that she finally agreed to see a therapist. She's been going for a few days now, and I can tell it's helping her a bit. She's starting to see that she can't fix everything for my brother, but she's still scared to push him too hard, worried he might do something, to himself. Meanwhile, my brother's been getting worse. He started wearing gloves all the time, even to bed. He says it's to keep the contamination away. I tried to talk to him about it, but he just shut down and locked himself in his room. It's like he's building a fortress around himself, and no one can get through. Then my girlfriend suggested we invite him over, thinking a change of scenery might do him good. I thought it was a terrible idea, but I agreed, thinking maybe, just maybe, it could help. Big mistake. When he came over, he saw a can of tuna in our trash and freaked out. He accused me of trying to poison him and stormed out. My girlfriend was upset, and I felt like a complete idiot for thinking it could work. But here's the kicker. My mom, seeing how bad things got, made a decision. She told my brother he had to start therapy or find somewhere else to live. It was a bold move, and I was proud of her for finally setting a boundary. But my brother, he didn't take it well. He packed a bag and left, saying he'd rather live on the streets than be forced into therapy. Now we have no idea where he is. My mom's a wreck, blaming herself for pushing him away. I'm angry at him for putting her through this, but I'm also scared for him. He's out there alone, with his fears and compulsions, and I can't help but feel responsible. I should have been there for him more, should have tried harder to understand. It's been a week since he left, and there's been no word from him. My mom's therapist is helping her cope, but it's tough. Every day, we hope he'll come back. But there's also this sinking feeling that maybe this is just how it's going to be from now on. Thanks for reading this. My husband hides explicit photos of his exes and lies about deleting them. So I expose his dirty secrets to the world and watch him squirm. My husband and I have been dating since 2016, and I am now married. He is the typical guy who bottles up his feelings and will not share his innermost thoughts or problems with me. I thought this was a communication issue, not deceit. However, I recently found out that he has been keeping a locked folder on his phone with explicit photos of his exes. I feel violated and gross, knowing he still has these photos. I asked him to delete them, but I'm not sure if he actually did. I'm also concerned about what else he may be hiding from me. I think we need counseling to work through this, but it is not covered by our insurance. I don't want to divorce him, but I'm afraid of the fallout from this situation. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Thank you. You're absolutely right. I think the fear I have is of the fact that I'm not prepared to act on the worst-case scenario. I am definitely the type to cut and run, but having been together so long, I allowed myself to trust and become intertwined with him to a degree that I would be unable to leave quickly. You really hit the nail on the head, though, because I will continue to spiral, so I'm going to try and talk to him. The sooner I know how deep this goes, the sooner I can make a plan to either forgive and repair or cut my losses. Comment 2. You know he is lying. He wouldn't keep these photos if he really cared. Like having some on some long-forgotten cloud storage? Sure. Right there in his gallery? Nope. Deliberate action. Like he's spitting nonsense right into your face like you're some idiot. Disrespectful as frick. Worse than keeping the photos, in my opinion. Keeping these photos with the presumably revoked consent is also icky and disrespectful. Asked to see his battery usage. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around. So, here's what went down. The other day, I caught him again, this time on his computer, and guess what? More photos, not just of his exes, but of other women I don't even know. I was fuming. I confronted him, and he tried to brush it off, saying they were old and meant nothing. But that's not the point, is it? It's about trust, and clearly, there's a crack in ours. I thought about what to do all night. The next morning, I made a decision that could change everything. I took his laptop while he was in the shower, and I went through it. I found emails, chats, things that no wife should ever have to read. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would burst out of my chest. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I called his sister, the one person he listens to. I told her everything. She was shocked and promised to talk to him. I was putting my marriage in someone else's hands, but I was desperate. His sister must have said something that struck a nerve, because he came home that night with a different attitude. He apologized, said he'd been stupid and selfish. He promised to delete everything and to go to counseling with me, even if we had to pay out of pocket. I wanted to believe him so badly. We went to our first session, and it was rough. He talked about feeling inadequate and how those photos were an escape. The counselor suggested he might have an addiction. I was sitting there, trying to process it all, feeling like I was in some bad dream. But then, the next bomb dropped. His ex, one of the ones from the photos, she showed up at our house. She was angry, said he'd promised to leave me, that they were planning a life together. I couldn't believe it. Was my whole marriage a lie? He denied it, of course, said she was obsessed and couldn't let go. But the doubt had already planted itself in my mind. How could I trust anything he said? In the midst of all this, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a man claiming to be a private investigator, hired by someone who thought their spouse was cheating with my husband. My world spun. I couldn't breathe. I hung up without saying a word. I haven't told my husband about the call. I don't know what to do with that information. I feel like I'm in a game of chess, but I'm the only one who doesn't know how to play. So here I am trying to piece together my life, not knowing who or what to believe. And the worst part, I can't shake the feeling that there's more they don't know, that I'm being played, and I'm just too blind to see it. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.